As I said, I'm Jeff Garrison. My company is JCG Consulting, and the tagline is Inspiring Extraordinary Sales Habitudes. But really what I do is help people be more confident and have more fun and sell more. And that's it. I want to tell you now about the genesis of Sales Habitudes, how this came about. And I figured this stuff out and developed this program through several years of mistakes running my own company. And isn't that how most things get developed, right? I went to Drake Law School and knew a couple years into school after clerking for a judge in a law firm that I didn't want to practice. And Preferred Risk Insurance, which is Guide 1 now, offered me a job. I hadn't actually finished yet, but they called and said, we've got a job in Seattle. We know you want to go west. If you want to go, you got to be there in 2 weeks. So my wife and I sold all our furniture. We drugged up the cat and threw her in the car and headed out west. Had a really mean cat, yeah. So, we were in Seattle for 5 months, and I was transferred to Denver. And I was there for about 5 years before I was brought back to Des Moines. And I was with them for a year here in Des Moines. My boss, the senior VP of claims, resigned, and the company was kind of circling the wagons financially. And I was a project manager, which means most of my budget was expendable at the time, and they were taking all the fun stuff away from me. And the only thing I had left on my plate was I was consolidating offices, including the ones that I used to work in. I had to go out and tell folks that it didn't have a job anymore. And at that time, I decided, it's time for me to become an entrepreneur. And my family, my father has been recruiting for over 20 years in the life insurance industry. My oldest brother has been recruiting for 15 years in the life insurance industry. My youngest brother has over a decade recruiting primarily in the life insurance industry. So I wanted to become a recruiter as well. But I was the black sheep. I recruited for the property and casualty insurance industry. A totally different animal. I started out with a different name. Let's see. The Dinosaur was what we called ourselves to begin with, and the logo didn't transfer on here, but the Garrison organization is what we eventually went to. And what happened for me, the beginning of my entrepreneurial experience, I consider myself to have been very lucky. That's why I have the easy button up there. Everything just seemed to be easy for me when I started. And let me explain. When I started out, I had a claims background, and all I wanted to do was recruit claims professionals, because that's what I knew. I didn't know that focusing in a very narrow niche was a smart thing to do in business, but that's what I did. And part of the easy part was when I left Guide 1, because I was closing offices around the country, I was staffing up the remaining offices as part of my job. So they signed a contract with me in my exit interview for me to do that work. So I had my first $20,000 under contract before I actually left my prior job. So yeah, I consider that to be pretty lucky to have that. The thing I did the first week was I went to a national trade show, the annual claims exposition. It's the ACE conference, and I introduced myself to the keynote speaker, Carl Van from the International Insurance Institute. And we spent some time talking, and at the conference he introduced me to the editor of Claims Magazine, and the magazine sponsors the conference. His name was Phil Schreiner, and about a month or two later, Phil Schreiner introduced me to Jim Jones, who's the director of the Katie School of Insurance at Illinois State. And he interviewed me for an article about the recruitment and retention of claims professionals, and it went into their magazine. So now it looks like I know what I'm talking about. I'm an instant expert to this crowd. And that article led to them asking me and Jim to present at the next ACE conference to senior leaders from insurance companies around the country on the recruitment and retention of these people. We did a good job because they asked us to do it the next year, and they asked us to do it the next year. So I had also developed a little bit of a process around recruitment. It wasn't so much a sales process, it eventually evolved there. And I had really strong word of mouth. So again, this was the easy button. But what happens after that first $20,000 starts to tail off, I've got to start figuring out how to actually develop business. And this is what happens to a lot of entrepreneurs. And if this is your experience, share with us. But you leave your W-2 job and you have contacts where you're at, people that know you and trust you, and they're kind of the low-hanging fruit for your first clients. And so you get that, and that could last for a while. I've seen it last with some companies for years, the same small cluster of clients, and they never learn to develop business until they're in real trouble. So what happens is just that. You get the easy business, it starts to tail off, and you are in trouble, or it's going good, and here's what happened to me. I decided I needed to grow. I needed to expand. So what am I going to do? I'm going to hire salespeople. I'm going to hire some other recruiters. And the first one was somebody who was like me. It was a claims professional. And my impression, my understanding based upon my experience was that business development was easy because it just came so easily in the beginning. So if it's that easy, it's just a question of time. I just don't have enough time to go out and get new business and service new business. Has anyone seen that or been that person hired for a company that thinks it's easy? All you got to do is get your business card and go out and start sharing it, and you're going to open the floodgates of new business. Yes, I'm getting a few here, so perhaps it was a painful experience and you don't want to talk about it. But this is what happens in these companies. They hire that person. They're supposed to be doing easy work, bringing in business, and it doesn't happen. So they start making excuses like that person is lazy. That person doesn't know what they're doing. They're too young, whatever. And they'll get rid of that person and go to the next one. And they'll start doing some serial hiring, making the same mistakes. And then what you start hearing is, you just can't get good help these days. Nobody likes to sell, stuff like that. And then another mistake they make, because they're entrepreneurs, they don't want to spend a lot of money getting somebody with a lot of experience. They tend to pay a low base, if any base, get somebody who they perceive doesn't need a lot of money, because this is just easy stuff anyway. Right? Does all this make sense? What's going on? All right, so this happened to me, and I hired several people over a period of 8 years. I had about 9 recruiters, and at one time, the biggest we got was 5. So, I started to figure things out a little bit.